We begin today with breaking news.
Traffic is backed up. There's an accident on the freeway.
About a dozen downtown businesses were boarded up Wednesday.
And in business, the stock market fell through the floor
Two
today.
nights of protests over the police shooting of an unarmed black
This is
man.
a regular affair for the president who has
Have you
spent
been
many
wondering how
hours.
safe is the beef here at home?
It's a mad world. Hello. Hello. Welcome, everyone,
Greetings.
to Mad World, the place, or the show, podcast rather, where we try and make sense of all the craziness, the looniness, whether those are current events, latest headlines in the news, trends going on in pop culture and elsewhere. We try and make sense of all of this and figure out where we go from here. And I'm one of your hosts, Los, aka our artist formerly known as Los Stevens, aka your friendly neighborhood Los. And as always, I'm joined by
Big Talk Bertram. The captain of the ship.
the train. What were we saying off air about the train? The conductor, whatever.
I didn't say anything like that at all.
I think you said something about a train, but
I said nothing about trains.
left the station, something like that.
I don't know. Big Top Bertram. Oh my goodness.
I
Hey,
don't.
how y'all doing?
How's everyone doing? Thanks for tuning in to
Pretty
yet
good.
another episode 82. 82.
Oh my goodness.
So over the course of this show, we've covered quite a bit of topics, and one of our most popular, Bertram, was ours about student loan debt. Remember that one?
Nope.
That was way back when, in our early days, we were the equivalent of maybe middle schoolers in the podcasting world. We're now old men. Bertram, as you know, or if you didn't know, is the world's oldest millennial ever.
Yes.
You have the pleasure of
100%.
listening. How old are you now since our last episode?
Man, I am 84 years old.
84, that's right. He happens to be the exact same age as his father, so it is a marvel. So
That's not true. I'm now 20 years older than him, actually.
Oh, you're now 20 years. That's right.
Oh my gosh.
Last time we checked in, he was 64. Now he's 84.
Yeah, I'm
but
20 years older. Just this world's flying on by. You don't stop and look around, you might miss it.
our episode
Is
on
this a joke to you, Los?
yes, it is. Our episode 19, which was released back on January 23rd, 2021, on student loan debt. We covered, yes, at the time this was a hot button topic, still is a hot button topic, but at the time we were reviewing the loan debt that a bunch of people, students, were amassing, and the potential for cancellation, and what are some of the alternatives to taking on student loan debt. Now we're turning the page a little bit, or expanding on it, to take a deeper look into graduate degrees, particularly master's degrees. So those of you who may have just graduated college, or maybe you're further on in your career and you're thinking of, man, maybe I need to get some more skills so I can make some more money or further in my craft, and thinking about getting into getting a master's degree.
And you know what else, though? Is I have a bunch of students who right now just graduated. A lot of my favorite students just graduated now high school.
Ooh.
I'm getting old, man. I'm 84.
You're an old man.
This could be an episode for them to consider, too. They should go back and listen to that student loan episode, too, that's in the show notes. Because as you talked about it, I did realize that was, when we recorded the student loan episode, that was our best episode to date. Would you agree?
Oh, man, it's hard to pick favorites. Our episodes are like children.
I remember when we published that, there was like, wow, best episode so far. I feel like it's been eclipsed by our drugs episode and our guns episodes, but that was a shining example. You did such a magnificent job. You were a puppeteer, sir. You were just pulling those strings.
They call me Geppetto.
Oh my! What's wrong with you?
I'm
real boy.
I like to think almost every episode we've done has been one of our best episodes to date. But
No,
you're
that's
right.
not true.
You're right. Some of them do stand out. And student loan debt was one of them. But as both of us being those with student loan debt, I think it really helped hammer it home. But yeah, as we're looking into master's degrees or other grad programs, I recently stumbled across an article, which is always a pre-production conversation with Bertram and myself. What are we covering this week? And recently I read an article from Business Insider titled "Master's Degrees Are the Biggest Scam in Higher Education and College" by James S.
Hyperbolic
Murphy.
much?
But why on earth would they say that master's degrees are scams if, as we've heard so many times, Bertram, bachelor's degrees are the new high school diplomas? So if that's the case, shouldn't there be a real high value for master's degrees?
They should probably be free bachelors if they're the new high school degree, right? If you require 4 more years of education, but you demand that we spend $100,000 to do it, that doesn't seem very fair to me.
Yeah. And so with master's degrees, if that's the next stepping stone to prosperity, why on earth would someone be compelled to write an article to boast this claim that master's degrees are a big scam, a big sham, if you will? Is it related to the debt itself, or is there something going on, something that we got to dig deeper in terms of looking into the inherent value of a master's degree?
Well, you have a bunch of numbers up here. Did you want to go over some of them? For example, it's necessarily about the I guess the phrase that we're going to keep bringing up this episode is the return on investment, right?
Yes.
And that, okay, what makes a bachelor's degree, more like high school? And they go, well, really, it's comparative to how much of a return that high school education is on the job that you get. I feel like right now, and I can't find any numbers, but if I were to say, like, hey, if you graduate high school, you are going to make considerably more than if you have no schooling whatsoever, right? Because there are not a whole lot of jobs out there you can get with absolutely no schooling whatsoever. If you can't read, you can't write, you can't do math, all that basic stuff. So what are they teaching you now in bachelor's, with a bachelor's degree in college, that is going to make you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth more employable, right? And then taking and looking at that, go, well, how much more would you considerably make? What would the median income be if you were to get a master's degree? And you have some data right here. Are you looking at it? Would you like to go over it?
Yeah.
You are a data nerd, Los.
I love me some data. Data, however you spin it, I love it all. These are useful tools. They're not necessarily the rules. And me I like to preface that because and this is something, if you don't know Bertram and I, we have a background. Before this podcast, we had a podcast titled Booze and Basketball, where we talked about basketball while reviewing good brews and booze along the way. And one of the things that has turned maybe people like Bertram off to basketball, or maybe some others, is the reliance on analytics data, right? And that we always try and sort of, in basketball, judge people off of their 3-point percentages or their plus minus and all these other fanciful stats that are out there. But we have to learn that there is nuance to it. There is sort of personal choices or specialties that go into everything that maybe the numbers don't necessarily justify.
Sure.
So
Depends
when
on what kind of master's degree do you get? What kind of bachelor's degree do you get?
Exactly. So there's all these variables, and some of that could, maybe you just as an individual really know what you're doing. Maybe you really value the knowledge that you get from a master's degree. Maybe the master's degree that you're getting at face value doesn't seem like it'll make a lot of money for you, but you have sort of plans that align with that. So maybe those don't justify themselves in the numbers itself. So we just want to preface out. This episode by any means will not look to discourage or encourage you to get a master's degrees. We just want to lay out the facts for you. And so we use this Business Insider article as a resource. All of our resources you can find in the show notes as always. What I'm also using is one from the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, which they call FREOP. And they published a study called Is Graduate School Worth It? A Comprehensive Return on Investment, aka ROI analysis of different master's degrees. So some of their findings were that over 40% of master's degrees failed to produce a positive ROI. So your return on investment is negative in around 40% of master's degrees programs that are out there. But overall, people with master's degrees see a net return of investment of $83,000 more with their master's degrees, but some are over $1 million. So that's something else to keep in mind. So when we're looking at it, right, it's showing that people, by and large, with master's degrees earn more than those without master's degrees, especially those who either only got a bachelor's degree or didn't even, you're just your high school graduate without a college degree. But it's really situational. It really is based on what type of master's degree that you got out. So, Bertram, if we're looking at sort of the reason why someone would want to go get a master's degree, what do you think some of those reasons would be?
Like why they would want to go get a master's degree in general?
In general.
Probably to get promotions, to make transitions in their career. I could tell you the reason that I went to go get my master's was because I did not have a degree in teaching, and I did a film degree for bachelor's, which was stupid. Don't ever do that. And I said, well, I want to teach. Well, I better go back and get my master's in something that's related to teaching. And so I took a master's in English, and that was able to transition me enough into a teaching degree. And then I just had to go get my credential. So, better movement, right?
Yeah.
You want to move into management, maybe things like that. You want to get fast-tracked on, getting promotions, into administration work, things like that. That would probably be the number one reason people would move up to a master's degree.
Exactly. And so occupational, right, or some sort of career mobility, and even looking at getting more skills. Those will probably be the top three. And all of those are supposed to amass, mean more money in your career. So that could be a driver. And one thing that the person behind this big study, who's mentioned both in the Business Insider article as well as the author of the study, Preston Cooper, for that Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, found that you're looking at more people than ever are getting master's degrees, while we're seeing a drop in people enrolled in getting their bachelor's degrees. So less people are in college in general. As we see, there's a lot of jobs out there, but at the same time, you're seeing more people enroll in advanced programs. And the reasons behind that are a little suspicious as we get into the why it's maybe seen as a scam here. And that's because the offerings of different graduate programs are popping up all over the place, such as, say, USC, as they mention here, has a master's in digital social media.
I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that, Los.
So more and more we're seeing many of these programs popping up. And what does that really mean? How far can that go? And some of the sadder results too are the people who are more likely to go for advanced degrees, such as masters, which include women, people of color, those who really are sort of disadvantaged or marginalized in the current field, who may feel the need to maybe compensate or sort of pop up among the field, really shine out there. So yeah, I come from, a background who heavily values education, and master's was seen as sort of that gold badge. But what we're seeing here is maybe that's really not the case, right?
Going back to what you said, what are the most financially worthless degrees? That honor goes to the masters in the arts, humanities, and theology. 85% of those degrees have a negative return on investment. You could make an argument about the inherent value of knowledge, of course, but that's not likely to impress whatever credit agency comes knocking to collect your student loan debt. This is from the Business Insider article, by the way. It doesn't take a master's degree in the arts to see what a master's degree in the arts will leave you worse off financially over the course of your lifetime. 62% of MBAs, the most popular of all master's degrees, provide no return on investment. The proof was pretty lousy for a master's in education, the second most popular degree. 32% of masters of ed programs have a negative return on investment. It just goes back to what you said, where you have to be very smart about what you're going to get a master's in. And it seems like some of the big ones, like education, business, really? Business has no return on your investment?
Oh yeah, before we go any further with the business, another thing that this guy Preston Cooper found was that the largest returns on MBAs are those degrees that come from your top 20 or so institutions. So your Harvard Business, Pennsylvania School of Business, Wharton, things like that. Those were some of the larger returns on investments from MBAs, where the rest of the pack didn't really see big returns. So most of the time, if you're looking at return of investments on MBAs, those are inflated by people attending those bigger schools. If you're not attending the bigger schools and you have a business degree, recent research, which I could put in, I think Wall Street Journal had an article not too long ago, which was showing that many business people with bachelor's degrees in business were seeing immense returns just from their bachelor's recently, as this job market is just seeking more and more people just in general. And so you're often seeing recent college grads taking on $100,000 job offers right now because the market is so hot. So if you're thinking about an MBA, maybe take a step back, unless you're ensured that you're going to get into like Harvard or one of these bigger business schools here, because an MBA may not be worth it, just judging by where the market is right now.
Yeah, and one of those, too, has to do with networking, right? You go to one of these big schools, and it's like, well, you're going to get hooked up with a lot of people who can help you, and they're going to be into that community, right? And so when you go to these big schools, that's one of the primary reasons for going. I have an article from Slate where it talked about master's degrees are the second biggest scam in higher education, and I just want to read this part.
Oh, second biggest now.
Yeah. It was an interview with this dude named Kevin Carey, who was director of education policy program at this place called New America. And it was the Wall Street Journal published a troubling expose on the crushing debt that burdens that students accumulate. And so the interviewer, Jordan Weissman, said, I feel like you have been methodically, Jesus, I'm having a hard day. It's a Sunday, man. Building up this thesis, which you would never quite put this bluntly, that master's degrees are basically the biggest scam in higher education. It seems like prestigious nonprofit universities are in on the grift along with for-profits. Would you say that's an accurate description of your take at this point, or have I wildly distorted it? And then Kevin Carey says, probably the biggest scam in higher education remains one-year certificates offered by shady for-profit colleges that cost $25,000 and don't lead to a job. Master's degrees are number two, certainly within the confines of colleges that are not legally for profit, but they are the biggest scam by far. In some ways, they're more similar than they might seem. One of them are one-year certificate programs. We don't call them that. We call them master's degrees, but that's part of the problem. They are, in fact, often one-year job-oriented programs that are heavily debt-financed, marketed very aggressively through online web advertising. They purport to provide very specific economic opportunities in a given field, It's just one are being marketed to students who just graduated from high school, and the other are being marketed to people who just graduated with a bachelor's. But other than that, they're kind of the same. And they gave some examples. The Columbia School of Journalism offers what is essentially a 10-month master's degree that costs $70,000 or something like that. It starts in September, ends in June. You can only do so much in less than a year. It's completely a career-oriented degree. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of career-oriented programs out there. One of the reasons that universities are able to be exploitive in the master's degree market is because they're not constrained in the same way that they are in the market for bachelor's degrees. If you're offering bachelor's degrees, they have to be 4 years long. You don't have 2-year bachelor's degrees or 6-year bachelor's degrees. You have to publicly publish your acceptance rates, your average SAT scores. So to the extent that you're selling selectivity, you actually have to back it up with data, which we love on this podcast. Whereas in the master's degree market, you can call almost anything a master's degree. Master's degree programs do not have to publish their admission statistics, which creates, I think, an enormous temptation for institutions that have very attractive brand names that are attractive in no insignificant part of because their undergraduate programs are very selective, to open up the floodgates on the master side and pay no penalty in the market because people don't know they're doing it. Man, so you mean there's not a whole lot of regulation on what you can call a master's degree too, Los? That's part of a problem too.
Yeah, and to go further than that, when you look at masters as it pertains to student loan debt, which when we look at all these numbers, right, and you could attest to this as a holder of a master's degree, a majority of these high amounts that we're seeing with student loan debt, when you see people saying, oh, I have 80 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand in student loan debt, a lot of those are for those who went into graduate programs, whether they completed them or not. And to the credit of most master's degrees, I think completion rates are higher than 80%. So that's good that people finish by and large. But when you're looking at those high values, those are people who've not just gotten their bachelor's, but also gotten their master's. And the big reason behind that is because when you're obtaining a bachelor's degree, the government has a cap on how much you can borrow to put towards that bachelor's degree, whether that's done on a semester by semester basis or yearly or whatever. With a master's degree, there's no cap. There's no limit on what you could borrow towards that master's degree. So what that means is that these institutions can effectively charge more and more for these master's degrees over time. So that puts the burden on you, the borrower, more and more. And so, with these digital social media degrees, these master's programs, you could be on the hook paying 50 grand a year for something that I hope it takes you far, but it may not. And then those who are in the arts, which, hey, Bertram and I, we love the arts. But as we're seeing more and more, the ROI just doesn't go so far. We came into Los Angeles among these film industry types. A lot of them had their masters, and a lot of them moved back to wherever they came from because there's just not much of a return there. And so that's
I came in and knew how to do everything in the film business, and then the film business wouldn't let me do those things. Like, you got to start from the bottom, kid. And I'm like, but I already know how to roll cables and all these things. It's like, why I didn't pay $150,000 to roll cables, no offense. Yeah,
effectively, and that's the thing in the film industry. Everyone starts at around the same place, more or less. You got to start at the bottom. And so there really isn't that benefit there as there are with some of the other professions, right? So when you're looking at, say, being a dentist is almost always worth it. I think they said, I think the numbers I have here, and I want to make sure I'm right, but the return of investment is around like $10 million to be a dentist. And there's some other occupations that are out there, but that are really worth it, right? So if you're going into any of the STEM environments, right? So whether that has to do with computers, computer science, engineering, also nursing is somewhere where you could get a great return on investment, and it's a need for that to happen.
Well, And in fact, the article says some master's programs, such as nursing or engineering, provide targeted training that employers want and legitimately need. But to work in a college admissions office and earn $48,000 a year, do you really need a master's in student affairs? And that's the problem, right? Is that these colleges are so predatory where they're like, we offer all these majors. If you want to come here and do everything, they prey upon this fact that we've been told by everyone, the president of the United States will say, hey, you should go to college. Always go to college. And the colleges know that, so they say, hey, we already got their money. They're coming towards us. We can offer whatever we want. We don't have to care how much of a return on investment they get. Yeah, let them work in college admissions. You're not going to see a return on your investment. Whereas you just said a dentist always makes that return on investment, right?
Yeah, man, makes me think twice about not wanting to be a dentist growing up. I still hate going to the dentist office, but everyone has to go, right?
Man, those dentist offices are swanky.
Yeah, so fancy. I remember once, and it's funny because University of Colorado Boulder is ranked as, if not the most, the best dentist school in the country. And me growing up in Colorado, I went to some pretty swanky dentists. One of them had like warm cookies after you got
your my goodness
your dental exam. Oh man,
I went to the dentist a couple months ago and they gave me like toothbrush, toothpaste. They gave me a coffee mug a really nice coffee mug. I was like, man,
yeah,
you guys are all right, mister.
Warm towels when you're done. Oh man. You ever hear that?
Put Netflix on the top of the
yeah. You ever heard that bit from Chris Rock? This was like way back when. I think it was his Never Scared special or Kill the Messenger, one of those. But maybe we'll have that in the show notes for you. But he talks about where he lived in New Jersey. I think it was Inglewood, New Jersey. And he was like, this is where I'm one of like 4 black people that live there. There's me. I'm a comedian. I've done all right. There's Mary J. Blige, one of the greatest R&B singers ever. Eddie Murphy, one of the funniest actors, most successful of all time, and Jay-Z. And he was like, you want to know who my next door neighbor is? A dentist. And I was just talking about how him as a black man had to do twice as much to get where he needs to go compared to a white person. And, his neighbor is a dentist. He's like, he's not the best dentist of all time. Just a regular dentist. And, so shout out to all the dentists out there. You know what you're doing.
My goodness.
And as an aside here, and we're not going to dive too deep into these degrees, but what they found with PhDs are that those provide some of the lowest ROIs out there, because you're taking one step further. And the thing about PhDs they're often very nuanced, right? Because it's highly specialized and it's more of a project that you're undertaking into a specific area of your study or branch of the field that you're in. So yeah, they generally lead to higher salaries, but those are very reliant upon what you're doing and the undertaking. If you're not already making much, just, that's really a personalized thing there. But yeah, with the master's degrees, it was really interesting to see. And I guess when we talked about going back to the arts, right, there was always that sort of feeling that may be on the lower end, but not as much as when you see the data. You're just like, wow, there really should be something done about this, wouldn't you say?
Man, absolutely. Your Chris Rock metaphor just sticks in my head. And that's part of the problem, right? I was thinking about, while I was reading this article, our good friend Josh Hawley, who continues to ask people if America is still racist. And it talks about on here The credentialization of the labor market hits women and people of color who enroll in master's programs at higher rates especially hard. 60% of grad students are women. Advanced degrees hold out the promise of overcoming racial and gender discrimination in the workplace. Get a master's, the thinking goes, and your boss will be more likely to pay you more. Black women caught in a bind where they face labor market discrimination after earning a bachelor's degree frequently feel their primary option to get any economic stability is to earn a graduate degree. Dominic Baker, a professor of education policy at Southern Methodist University, told me. Institutions are then able to saddle these students with debt on the promise for a better future. Like, how do you read that and sit there? We still have so much work to overcome, and this is still a huge problem, and we don't really have a fix for it right now, because it is true that, we have all this workplace discrimination based on gender, based on race, and how do you fix that in this realm, I guess, right? It's like, how can we make it so that people don't feel compelled to have to go get a master's, to have to go get a PhD just to be treated the same way as that dentist, right? It's like Chris Rock, Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, they're at the top of their field, and here's this regular dentist, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I just think of him saying, "Hey, it's Chris. I live right next to Chris Rock, Bob." But yeah, and that sort of spits in the face of this notion of, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard, doing all of that. Because for all intents and purposes, deciding to pursue a master's is taking the most initiative as a person could do, is right.
Yeah.
You're making it because no one's forcing you to get a master's. So you're taking that initiative. There's a high chance that you thought really hard of, man, okay, making this decision, I'm going to pursue my master's so I can go further in my career. People will see that I'm serious about being in this field, and then for it to not pay off, it's almost like making a bad bet that you had all of this data, all of these metrics that you were comparing to make this decision, and then you're taking on more and more debt, being told that, man, your master's is not worthless, but not worth as much as you thought it would be. Well, unless it's in the arts, then that could effectively be rendered worthless. But hey, it's just it does contradict this notion that there isn't discrimination out there, that there truly is some stuff going on, especially amongst different races, but even genders too. Like, women are doing all they can to really climb the ladder, and that for them to find that they're maybe not good enough it's upsetting.
I have a link in the show notes to an article by CNBC. It says, "Is a master's degree worth it?" Nearly 2/3 of people with an advanced degree said they regretted it, according to PayScale, and the biggest regret was student loans. You have received these messages that the master's degree is going to lead to higher income. I think that's the reality we live in, that in some fields, it's harder to predict. People have high debt levels. They're not making very much, and those loan amounts start to grow because the interest is capitalizing. What's more, they held more of other types of debt, including an average 21% more credit card debt than the national average, according to educationdata.org. They also carry it with them a long time. The average student borrower takes about 20 years to pay off their student loan debt, but for professional graduates, it can take over 45 years.
Wow.
Financial aid is one way to mitigate the costs and debt burden a student will incur, but for students pursuing a master's in business administration, which is quite popular, financial aid can be quite competitive. By contrast, a master's in education is one of the least expensive degrees, and there is a federal loan forgiveness program for teachers who use the degree to go into public teaching or a field with a lack of teachers. Similarly, if social workers go into public service, they may also be eligible for loan forgiveness. Yeah, but here's the problem. When did this article get written? 2021. I don't know if you guys know this, but man, that old Betsy DeVos, she was an evil human being that was in the Department of Education. So when you say, oh, these loan forgiveness programs are a thing, that's just old CNBC, not being 100% accurate.
Being ill-informed.
Being ill-informed, about the mess of the loan forgiveness program. I'm a teacher. Don't even start to talk to me about it, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem too with when we go back to our student loan debt episode. I think one of our takeaways too was it'd be nice if the government happened to cancel some student loan debt, right? That'd be nice. Whether you're on the side that says, well, maybe all of it should be forgiven, or if you think it should be a little more targeted, like many of the current estimates are around $10,000 in debt. But yeah, all in all, it would be nice if some, if not all, student debt could be forgiven. But what needs to change, as we said back when, is that you also need to reform how the government's sort of signing off on all of this debt. Because to just let all of these institutions charge whatever they want, create new programs out of thin air, and then charge you so much money for it, that's a little counterproductive. And so, yeah, you're just, because the colleges could then say, well, over time, the government may forgive you on this or cancel this. So, yeah, we could just charge whatever we want. And don't worry about it. Just sign here. Sign here if you want to get this degree, and you'll be fine. But I think the thing should be, right, if it's not really worth as much, if we have the data here that the ROI probably isn't as high in some fields, why should it cost as much? And let them really market adjust to that, instead of having these sort of, I can't call it monopolies, but these just like these levers that these institutions have to drive up this artificial market for these degrees that really aren't worth as much. And so in a sense, even a master's degree could be predatory, because you're just looking for that gold star that is your master's degree, and you're thinking that it's going to lead to a higher income. And if it doesn't, then what are you going to do with that? You're just going to feel real bad about yourself, and then feel stupid for even pursuing that in the first place, or hoodwinked. And I just don't think that's the best way to go about it. But that's kind of how it is right now.
Man, I started checking out this educationdata.org. Have you been on here?
Education Day Data.
Data.org. It's the Education Data Initiative. It started to worry me here because it says research and resources to tackle the rising cost of higher education. And it says original reports featured by New York Times, Washington Post, Associated Press, Time, BBC, Fox News, The Guardian, Brookings, CNBC, The Boston Globe. And I'm just like, man, what a very eclectic group of sites there. But then it has the BBC and the Associated Press. And it also has joined the discussion. Oh, my goodness. It's got a bunch of Twitter stuff on there. All right. But so anyway, I clicked on research by topic, and I went to average graduate student loan debt, and I went to average master's student loan debt. Most master's degree holders carry a cumulative student loan debt balance over $70,000. For graduate school alone, the average debt among master's degree holders exceeds $55,000, and it just has a ton of numbers and a nice bar graph, and it says since the year 2000, the average debt among master's degree holders has increased 74%.
Ooh-wee.
60% of master's degree holders owe student loan debt. Among master's degree holders who attend public institutions, 57% own student loan debt. And there's just a lot of really nice graphs on here, so I'm putting it in the show notes, and I want you guys to go check it out. It also has doctoral and professional debt. PhD holders, oh my goodness, these numbers are getting really big.
They're getting big.
Yeah. Among PhD holders who attend public institutions, 37% have student loan debt. 72% of those who earn professional doctorates at private nonprofit institutions owe student loan debt. Oh my goodness. 90% of those who earn professional doctorates at private for-profit institutions owe student loan debt. That's almost all of them. 107,000 is the average student loan debt among PhD holders.
Oof.
Man, that's just, these numbers are, ooh, man, doctor of education. Ooh, you sure ain't making that much money. Man, look at from, okay, so this is nuts. Doctor of medicine. This is average student loan debt among doctorates. So if you have a doctorate in medicine, between 1999 and 2000, your student loan debt was $87,000. Okay.
Okay.
So 22 years ago, you had $87,000 in debt. In 2003, that number went up from 87,000 to 118,000.
Whoa, whoa.
Then 2007, Los, I've been I've been around for all of this. This isn't like back in my day. This is my day. It's still ongoing, brother. So then in 2007, it went up from 118,000 to 135,000. Then in 2011, so in 11 short years between 2000 and 2011, it spiked from $87,000 in student loan debt to, if you have a doctorate of medicine, you are at $182,610. So that's 2011, 2012. Then the last number is 2015, 2016. Take a guess.
2018 to 2000.
No, 2015, 2016. What average debt do you have if you have a PhD in medicine?
A PhD in medicine.
182,000 in 2011. So it's only 4 years later.
Yeah,
How much debt?
I'm gonna go north of 200, so I'll say 211.
Oh, I had $30,000 more dollars.
Oh
to
my
You'd be right.
God, Lee. Oh, I think I'm gonna need a doctor right now because I'm having a heart attack.
Average student loan, 241,000 if you graduated. Now that's just 2015. So now I'm terrified to see what the 2022
inflation
numbers are. Oh my goodness! Look at this for a doctor of law. Like, all right, dude, you got your PhD. You're a doctor of law.
Yeah, that's
okay. In the year 1999-2000, you had 57,000 in student loan debt. Now you have $142,000. That's ridiculous. If you went into health science, $80,000 in debt in the year 1999. In 2015, $198,000. What are we doing here, Lowe's? What is this? Oh my goodness.
And there's just something to be said too, right? Because when you think of, even if there are high returns, so if you have a doctor of medicine, you're going to make a lot of money throughout your lifetime. So, the ROI is pretty good, at the very least fair, but most likely pretty good. But I think and I'm not saying we got to do a whole nationalization thing like Cuba, right? Where they just churn out doctors who you could be a taxi car driver, as Vox once put it, and you make more than a doctor. But because these salaries are so inflated, it's because of a scarcity, as we could imagine, right? It's like there's not enough doctors in this country, as we saw with the pandemic. Not enough, health care practitioners in general, nurses, all of that. So it's like, why can't we do something about like driving the costs down so we could get more of these professions, and so the burden wouldn't be as heavy as they are now? Because I think there truly is a market reason why costs are so high, and then it turns around and the salaries are so high. That's not the case for, say, like, if you're in the arts or admissions officers and stuff like that, where the demand, it's just not matching up there. That's just institutions charging whatever they want. But for doctors and anything in medicine, like, we should be wanting more of those. So there should be more of an incentive for more people to get them, rather than what it looks like, right? They're very cost prohibitive. So if you want to be a doctor and you don't maybe have the money, it's almost like, and you don't want to take out all of this debt, it's almost like, you're kind of out of luck there. I have an example. My sister wants to be a doctor. She's now in her early 30s, doesn't have the funds unless she wants to take out all this debt. So it's like, where do you go from here?
What happens if you don't make it?
Yeah, what happens if you don't make it too? You're already saddled with, what if you're already 180 in the hole? You still have 60 to go.
Man, I can't get this degree.
Yeah, I can't get this degree. What am I going to do?
Trying to be a surgeon, I broke all my fingers.
That's a very sad story. But
Can we agree, Los, that even everyone on the left and everyone on the right says, well, there's more of a demand for these jobs. Well, if there's such a demand for it, then where is this labor market? Where is this supply and demand where it's like, okay, how are we going to get more doctors without having these people take out all this debt? How can the left and the right come together on something we all agree on, which is, you know what? Maybe it's a really bad idea to have most of our Americans training to work at Taco Bell. Right.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, well, these jobs are going away. We need someone to do them. No, we need to eliminate those jobs.
Yeah.
And we need to make it so that how can we make it more affordable for good people to not work at Taco Bell, but to go become a doctor or something like that and make the money. And you have these predatory institutions like, well, we can charge this much, so that's what we're going to charge, even though it is not beneficial. Like, it's not a good investment. Right. Well, because they're going to get paid a lot of money. Yeah, but it's still not a good return on their investment. It's getting more and more exorbitant. You saw the markups on these fees. It hasn't gone since 1999. You can't argue that, man, like these colleges are just doing triple what, just as in terms of being great teachers, they're doing triple what they used to be doing in 1999, 2000. I don't think that's accurate.
No, not at all. And you look at what philosophy. What was it, Doctor of Philosophy?
Big Shack.
Yeah, that's on average you're looking at $107,000 in debt as a PhD in philosophy.
You ain't never gonna see that money again.
Like in 1627, like you would have been doing well as
my goodness.
having a PhD in philosophy. But nowadays, yeah, you're a very smart person.
Stevens
Lostradamus is doing his thing. Yeah, I respect him. I love hearing from him in podcasts and reading his books and studies and watching his YouTube videos. But I just don't think his salary is going to look that impressive. And so, yeah, but to your point, the incentives for us to sort of, if we were truly following a market model, right, if there is this overwhelming demand for, say, doctors, shouldn't the costs come down to be able to obtain that target? But we're seeing the exact opposite, which lends credence to the possibility that this could be a scam, right? Even if the perceived ROI is high, but that is a huge undertaking. I know you said it as a joke, but what if you did lose your hand and you were studying to be a surgeon? Like,
you get all that money back, baby.
Yeah, you should get there should be some rebate, loss of fingers rebate. But, it's.
Happened to Doctor Strange. You just got to give him the cape.
Yeah, maybe you could go to another dimension where you have your fingers back.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know.
Become a master of the mystic arts, but apparently that
oh yeah,
not a good return on your investment.
Nope.
Because
you'll be 180 in the hole.
I don't know Doctor Strange actually makes any money being the master of the mystic arts. I think that's a bad return on his investment.
He has a second job.
He spent $300,000 going to grad school to become this, to learn, from Wong. Wong charged him all this money. And he's not making any money back, so he has a second job.
Poor thing, man. Poor thing.
He should go to another dimension and warn them not to take that investment.
So I guess the question goes, right? So if I'm someone, whether I recently graduated from college or I'm a recent high school grad, or I'm just trying to get ahead of myself doing my own research. Be careful with that, by the way. I think we will have an episode on that soon, doing your own research.
To be continued.
But if they're asking someone like us who has the data, who has been able to look at some of this stuff for advice, right? How do I know if I should be going for my master's? Like, what sort of advice would we have for someone like that?
Man, that's a great question. One of the big things that I said was I wanted to talk about on this podcast, going directly out of college, or should you take time to specialize? I think one of the best things that happened for me during my career was I went straight to college, got a bachelor's degree in something stupid, went out to Los Angeles, tried to apply it, realized my degree was absolutely worthless, right? And then kind of found something else that I could make money in, right? And then after a while, enough time was removed from college that I said, oh, now I know what I want to do, and I know what I can make money doing. Now I'm going to go back to go get my master's. So for me, I think one of the fixes could be, and it's not going to fix everything, but can you assess where your strengths are and then realize what you can do to gain that knowledge? So there's a lot of stuff out there. Do you require a 2-year master's program to go out and get that knowledge, or are there some other courses that you can take? Los, I was talking to you maybe a month ago where you talk about taking online courses or learning skills, learning how to program, things like that. And it's probably a lot cheaper than going to a master's, getting a master's degree. So ask yourself that question. Well, what skills do you need to get in a career that's going to make you a lot of money? Does someone want to see a master's degree, or do they just want to see those skills? And that's the question you got to ask. And maybe it comes down to asking hirers, saying, hey, if I had the skills for this, or if you saw a master's degree, which one would you rather have?
Yeah, exactly. That is great advice. It's like going out there and doing some networking on your own, right? Maybe having sort of just informational interviews with people in the fields that you're looking at. Maybe, yeah. So like going on LinkedIn, seeing if you want to be a data scientist, right? And you're thinking about, man, maybe should I go and get my master's? Find a data scientist who works at Google, Apple, Microsoft, any of these big companies. Connect with them, ask them, hey, I've been thinking about getting into this field. Is it worth it for me to get my master's? Another suggestion that I saw, I think it was from the author of the Business Insider article, was do an assessment based on what that master's degree will give you. Will it give you skills? If it will just get you networking, you should probably not go for it. If it'll give you transferable skills that'll directly line up with where you want to go, maybe it's worth it looking at. Also look at the schools, right? I talked about earlier how MBAs really don't have a great ROI unless you go to some of the top institutions, which isn't the case for all masters, but it's showing for MBAs that may be the thing. So if you maybe can't get into one of those bigger schools right now, maybe you should, look somewhere else. You mentioned some of these like online courses, these certificates. Yeah, Google, which I've enrolled in myself, that could be our unofficial but not really sponsor for this episode. Google career certificates. So I've undertaken their career certificate in both UX design, user experience design for the uninitiated. So the look and feel of any software product that program that you're using, and project management. Those hold I think it's a monthly charge of like $40 a month, and they're estimated that if you do at least 10 hours of studying in the certificate a week, that could take you around 6 months to finish it. So you do the math, that's really not $50,000. That's a path, and they have a vast network there with transferable skills that they say with that certificate you could land at least an entry-level position, which I went around halfway through the certificate route for the project management. I landed the job I have now as a result of the skills that I gained from that certificate. So I could tell you it does breed results there. So yeah, just doing your homework. If you're thinking about going for your master's, it's very likely you're already a smart person. So just do your homework, study relentlessly on the field and the master's programs that you're looking at it, and try and calculate, is it really worth the return? You could look in our show notes. We're going to provide some tools. I have a full ROI. It's like a calculator, a table that you can compare based on the degree field that you're looking at, the degree type, whether that's master's or whatever, as well as the institution. So if you're, say, looking at USC for digital social media, it'll show what the earnings at a specific by age 45 will be earnings at graduation, ROI before you complete. So factoring in something we didn't really mention was your opportunity costs while obtaining these degrees. So the opportunity cost is how much money are you missing out on while you're obtaining your degree. So you could factor all of that stuff in. And then hopefully,
that's important.
Yeah, that's important because if you're, a lot of these stats are looking at full-time students of these master's and graduate programs. So if you're taking time off and maybe working part-time or not working at all, like factor that into, what you're looking at earning after that. Also look at your lifestyle, right? Let's say you took out $150,000 in student debt and you land a job that gets you around $100,000 right out the gate, which is pretty good when you say. But let's say,
oh man, that's great.
That's great. But let's say you get married, right? Now you're about to have a kid. Now you're about to, maybe get a bigger apartment or a house. Now you're taking on a little more debt, right? In addition to your student debt. So you also have to factor in what your lifestyle is going to be. If you're going to live like a hermit while you earn $100,000, I mean, that you can make grand strides in paying off your student debt. But if you're starting a family right out of getting your master's degree, woof, that could be a little overwhelming there. So do your homework. I think, like I said, if you're looking at getting a graduate degree, you're already a smart person, so you could decide, but just make some sound decisions. And hey, even if you're in the arts, right? And you just feel, Los, I don't care what you're talking about. I don't care what Bertram's talking about. I really want to get my master's in fine arts. Just know that, okay, you're probably not going to make enough money out of that. But if you just value the knowledge that you're going to get out, that's fine. Just don't come to us. Don't write us on our Instagram or Reddit or Twitter and say, hey, Bertram, Los, you made me get this master's. Now I'm not making much. Don't come to us. Just know that it doesn't earn you much, but you're going to be a master at your craft there. So, knowledge is power, and just maybe think of it more of a sacrifice rather than an investment. And
I'll add to
that's
that
okay too.
Because I do have my master's in English and I think about it. I realized it the other day when I wrote like a 10-paragraph email to someone and it was for a job. And I realized as I was writing it, I was like, wow, you know what? This was not a skill that a lot of other people can easily replicate. Like I wrote 10 paragraphs of really well-written, helpful, someone I'm working with for a job, they recognized, wow, this was really helpful and it advanced my career. It advanced my craft. Just being able to write a well-worded email that was long and insightful and in-depth. And I was flabbergasted, right? Because for the first time I thought, oh, wow, my master's degree in English is actually starting to become worth something because I've done it long enough now that I've seen the mastery, right? And now I say, oh, this is marketable. But the thing that I had to remind myself was, yeah, but you have to also know how to market this skill, which is still great because it's like, man, I can work for myself using this skill that I greatly polished. I don't have to just get a salary to get paid where this skill is not translating because I have this guaranteed salary and things. And it's like, I could probably go out and use this to make as much money as I want.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Bertram and I, we love the humanities. We love the arts. We love English and everything else, writing, all of that. Like, we're not saying there's no value in learning that. We're just, in this episode, talking about the ROI of obtaining the degree, not the skills. Like, those skills are very transferable, and like what you could do with it is sort of endless if you know, because it's a currency in and of its own right. We live in what they call a skills economy. It's what you could do with what you have that is able to, take you as far as you'd like to go. So with that, hey, do what you want to do and just make the best decision. And hopefully we gave you the best information as possible. Bertram, you have any final thoughts?
Man, just go out there and practice your craft and work for yourself. if you're going to pursue something, make sure it is a skill that you can market on your own and you don't need someone else to market it for you.
Exactly. And with that, this is that's about it for this episode. So thank you so much. Don't forget to follow/subscribe to this podcast so you know when we drop new episodes there. Check out our social media. We're on Instagram. We're on Reddit. You can check out our website, madmadworldpod.com. We have all those links in our description and our show notes. So we love you. Thank you for tuning in. It's been great. It's always great having these conversations with y'all. So I do want to give you one last reminder. On behalf of Bertram, I am Los, but don't ever, ever forget that it is a mad world. Bye-bye.